1% of dudes rapping, they ain't nice as me. 98% ain't live the same type of life as me. The judge gave me life and then they sent me where the life is be. That level 4 with depth and vice, the type of stuff they like to see. Two choices, fight or flee. I refuse to die a chump. I never been a mark, but damn, it's scary when that riot jump. I seen dudes cry, get pumped, and some sexually brutalized. Knew a dude who lost his life and he was only doing 5 year-long racial fights when homie all you do is ride. Lonely days and nights up in a hole causing suicide. From the moment you arrive, you see the Mexican mafia, AB skinheads with big giant swastikas, pro-black philosophers, the BGF, the Kumi, and Muslims who will murk you from the nation to the Sunni. That MS was loony, quick to ride up on they rival. Even Christians went to church, hide knives up in they Bible. Political and tribal, the Crips and Damus, the Long Beach, the Hubs and the Dubs and the Grooves, the IE, the Bakersfield, the Dago Pyrus, the hustlers quick to roll, the gangsters gon' move, whatever click you choose.
Say what's cracking YouTube? It's your boy 16 to life, and I'm back like I'm on a pro violation. Yard down! Now for those of y'all that's new to my page, in 1994 I got arrested. I was eventually sentenced to 16 years plus life, and I served 24 years straight in the California prison system. During those times, I accumulated some good stories. I'm going to share one with y'all today. If you like the video, be sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe. Most importantly, hit that notification bell. Yeah, that's me gassing right there on the intro, man. Like I told y'all, the flow is nothing like Curtis Blow. If you want to check out more of my music, go to my YouTube playlist, scroll down to gas stations, and you will find a lot of it there. Now let's hop right up into this story. So yesterday, somebody left a comment, and I believe the user's name was 49 on mine, and he asked me a question that I decided would be a good topic to turn into a video. And the question that he asked me was, can Crips and Bloods get revenge and basically retaliate in the pen? More behind some things that occurred on the street. I believe he had mentioned that Dubs had did a video on it, and while I have not watched his video, I will give you my my opinion and my experience on that in terms of Crips and Bloods. First and foremost, let's go back to this. So we all know once again that the blacks in the California prison system are very fractured. You know, you have other organizations and other races, when they hit the county jail, they immediately become and fall under one umbrella, and they're governed by a set of rules and protocols that apply to all of them, regardless of the tribalism or gang banging they may have been doing against one another in the streets. So basically they have rules and protocols in place that prevent one another from putting hands on each other if it's not sanctioned and approved by the higher ups who run that particular maybe organization, collective, or race, or whatever they have chose to affiliate themselves with. So once again, it's not like that with the blacks, right? And so when you hit the county jail now, especially when you hit the county jail for the blacks, county jail is really gang bang central. By that I mean, you know, dudes are fresh from the streets. Whatever animosities and hatreds they may have against other gangs are fresh because they're right there in the county jail. You know, the beefs is still brewing, and it's a lot of fades, it's a lot of fights. You know, a lot of times, depending on where you're from, soon as you hit the county jail, whoever considers themselves your enemies and whoever you consider an enemy of yours, you guys immediately when you go into the tank, if some of those guys are in there, you guys immediately gonna start fighting, get that fade out the way. You know, even if it's 7, 8 different dudes up in there that's from the gang that you don't get along with, you know, more than likely you will fight all of them, or at least a good number of them, you know. And so it's extremely wild. So that reason being is, you know, they're, especially like I said once again, with the blacks, the Crips, the Bloods, at least from down south, you know, there is no structure that dictates the preventing of violence among each other. And for the structures that do have that, you know, in all honesty, I must say that is definitely a good thing, because if you're trying to be unified and push forward without dissension, that is something that's extremely necessary, because you can't have a certain amount of unity when you are allowing inner tribalism and dudes fighting fighting amongst each other, Even with that in mind, right, you are still going to have individuals, even if they fall under the same structure, who just automatically don't like certain dudes because they are from different areas. So that's not gonna prevent the dislike. But at least they're going to be functioning still as one, and it's not going to be outwardly. The animosity is not going to be outwardly, and it's not going to allow to build up into something else, Unfortunately, like I said, once again, with the Crips and Bloods, the animosity is outwardly, and it prevents a lot of unity, and it prevents a lot of seeing of the big picture. Now, a lot of times when Crips and Bloods leave the county jail and get to prison, then a lot of that street tribalism, that street gang banging and stuff is nipped in the bud. I think it's extremely important for me to mention too that it also made a big difference if you were a Crip or a Blood, depending on the time period that you went to prison. Because by the time I got to prison in the mid 90s, you had a lot of more Crip on Crip beefs and wars going on the streets than you may have had in the early 80s, late 80s, so on and so forth. So I say that to say that some of the guys who I have spoke to who have done time in the past, like I spoke to Big Marcellus and got his opinion on this. And he said, yes, that, when back in his day, situations like that, they were at least tried, you did have individuals who at least would try to prevent those situations from getting out of control, getting out of hand and stuff. And then especially back then when you had the blacks more highly organized in prison than they were as opposed to when I went to prison. But keep in mind, sometimes it still happened because and it can happen in any structure, honestly, to be honest, if a person is willing to risk getting revenge and willing to risk whatever punishment or consequences he may have to face dealing with whatever particular organization that he once again has affiliated himself with, right? So let's just say you run across a person that has killed your brother, and you are in an organization that prevents inter-house dissension. But if the loss of your brother means more to you, and getting revenge for your brother or a loved one or whoever or a homie means more to you, then the revenge aspect means more to you than what you may have to face with once you do what you do, then you go ahead and do that, because there's nothing physically preventing you from attacking someone who you feel you need to get revenge on, other than the word of whatever organization you affiliate yourself in, And so, but like I said, with the blacks, that's something that the gang banging is. And now when I say gang banging, what I'm meaning is you may have hood A versus hood B, and just because you're from hood A, when you see someone who is from hood B, you automatically want to approach that person and get confrontational. Those type of situations, the gang banging is pretty much eliminated, because we have several gangs in prison, black gangs, that have been beefing with each other for the longest, years upon years upon years. There are, many lives lost on both sides, but they are able to hit that yard and function on that yard, in the presence of people they consider mortal enemies on the street, so that doesn't automatically create a beef. A lot of times they leave that stuff alone just in order to, have prison run a little smoother. But there are times, and there have been times, when a person may hit the yard with someone, a Crip or Blood. He just says, hey man, you know what? I'm not going for that, man. I'm not going for that. This dude killed somebody who was near and dear to me, and they choose to get their revenge. And so I'm gonna speak on this situation because it's something that is already out. It's something that's already on YouTube, and so I'm gonna insert a clip of Big U. And this is actually, if you happen to be in prison around this time or a little after, this was something that was very, very well known. These guys ran in the program office. Actually, now this was at a prison known as Calipatria. And the East Coast Crips are famous for running in the program office, attacking the guards. Well, actually, the 60s was the first ones to actually run in the program office and attack someone, except they just didn't attack the guards. They attacked the individual who had came to prison for killing one of their homies who was near and dear to them, right? In this video, you will hear Big U say that he was approached when he got to the yard by the Blue Notes, and they basically told him that, hey man, what happens on the street stays on the street. But he said, you know, he wasn't trying to hear that, and he was supposed to handle his business. Now, for those of you guys who may not know, I'll give you a brief, just a very brief description of the Blue Notes. Was basically a group of organized Crips in prison who had the same ideas about how Cripping should be ran and so on and so forth. So it was basically a prison gang of Crips organized in prison. By the time I got to prison, a lot of those gangs had been shut down. So anyway, let's hear Big U describe the incident that I just spoke about.
But no, when Stone got killed, I was in trial. I was just starting trial when Stone got killed. I don't remember what year it was. Fitzgerald, the one who actually was convicted of killing Stone, came to Cashapp. When he came to Cashapp, we had a Mexican standoff with what was it by the time? OVG, the San Gabriel Valley, all of them had got together, and all the Blue Notes had got together on the yard, and they came and told us that what happens on the streets stays on the streets, and that, you know, we can't do nothing to Fitzgerald when he comes.
So they ran the Blue Notes, or that Blue Notes was just trying to be peacemakers?
What? I mean, you know, they was really just doing what they doing. They was trying to be peacemakers on one note, and they was trying to be peacemakers. I would say they didn't have bad intentions. They were just trying to keep it 100 with what the prison was about. But then they knew the situation with us was bigger than whatever have you. So they shot their shot, and that wasn't gonna happen. If nothing else in my lifetime, if it was one thing in my life that was not gonna happen, that man wasn't gonna walk the yard with us. Period. And I actually stayed on that yard to try to catch him. And make a long story short, we caught him.
And so once again, yeah, you see him in that video talking about how, you know, he had been approached by certain collectives to basically leave the beef alone. And but he was unwilling to leave the beef alone. And so that's a situation right there. Like I said, that if a person, you know, has done something to you that you're unwilling to accept, then there is nothing preventing you from basically attacking that person, you know, outside of, if you don't have, you know, fear of going to the hole, fear of catching new charges, and fear of the ongoing beef that you may encounter due to this retaliation attack in prison, then of course there is nothing that's preventing a Crip or a Blood, you know, from you know, getting revenge. I also remember doing time with a dude by the name of Little Daniel. Little Daniel was from San Bernardino, specifically a hood known as California Gardens, the CGs. And now, while San Bernardino, and I've explained this before, San Bernardino is within the Inland Empire. The Inland Empire basically is Riverside County and San Bernardino County, and all those cities that encompass those two cities, right? And so even though the California Gardens are within the Inland Empire, they don't verbally claim IE. You know, you have gangs that are geographically located within the Inland Empire, but in prison they don't claim IE. California Gardens happens to be one of those gangs, but I have ran across a lot of dudes from California Gardens, and while they don't verbally claim IE, they at least physically run with the collective, because due to the geographical location and the region, they feel they have more in common with those individuals from that region. And so, like I said, I've ran across many CGs who still function with the collective, with the Inland Empire collective. But now, Little Daniel, who I think is easy to say that he was definitely one of, not only the top shooter from the California Gardens, he was easily one of San Bernardino's well-known top shooters. It's said that he drove a 75 Caprice glass house, you know, and they referred to it as the White Ghost. And this dude had a very vicious and notorious reputation. I only speak on him because he is no longer with us. He has passed away. But it is well known that, you know, he would pull up and put terror in the hearts of many individuals. And, you know, he it's said that he had several bullet holes in the White Ghost in the car they referred to as the White Ghost. And it got to the point where he just started covering them up with tape. You know, he was a well-known, feared shooter from the California Gardens. And so I was in Ironwood with Little Daniel. And even though Little Daniel was from the Inland Empire, he did not function with the collective, you know. And I took that to be because he was, due to his notorious reputation on the street for getting into a lot of shootings with people who was from the Inland Empire. I felt that he didn't trust people enough to run with the Inland Empire, and so he pretty much just done his own thing, you know. Like I said, it was said that, you know, he was wanted by many people for a lot of the things that he was involved in the streets. And so he knew very well that, you know, just because you run with a collective, if people want to get you, there's nothing preventing them from getting you. And, you know, like I said, the Inland Empire, it encompasses a lot of land. And initially, when I first got to prison, the Inland Empire was the Inland Empire car was a very united group. But then, of course, later on, in the late 2000s, mid 2000s, as you had more gangs located within the Inland Empire beginning to get into it with each other, beefing and stuff like that, there was a big divide, you know, and the car was not as unified as it was, because you had certain dudes who didn't want to function with other dudes because they happened to be enemies on the streets. And, you know, unfortunately, those dudes couldn't see the bigger picture that the collective was put in place to try to ensure the safety of everybody who was from the Inland Empire. But dudes was unwilling to put their pride to the side, their egos and their ignorance, in order to make it safe for everybody, or at least safer, you know. But so there's nothing though that prevents a Crip or a Blood from getting revenge in the prison if he chooses to. A while ago, I did a story, and the name of that story was called He Ran Across the Dude That Took His Brother's Life. And so I go into a story about a dude who happens to be on the yard, and he's actually friends with the person who was in prison convicted for killing his brother, and he doesn't know. He happens to go on a visit one day, and his mom comes to visit him, and the dude who is convicted of killing his brother just so happens to work in the visiting room. So during that visit, the mom at some point says, "Hey, that's that dude right there that killed your brother," because obviously she had went to the trial, you know, she had got familiar with his face and she recognized him. And so if you want to hear about the rest of that story, I'm going to leave a link in the description. And the name of that story is He Ran Across the Dude That Took His Brother's Life. So anyway, shout out to 49 on mine for posing a good question, man. A good question that I could turn into a video. Man, listen, y'all already know what time it is. It's your boy 16 to life. Resume normal program.